The Battle of Christophsis is often recognized as one of the breakout battles of the Clone Wars, but many people often forget just how important it was. In today's video, I will break down every single aspect of the Battle of Christophsis, from what we know about it on screen to the information given to us off screen. Following the Battle of Geonosis, the Clone Wars kicked off with no delay, and one of the first battles was Christophsis. Located in the Outer Rim, Christophsis held great value to both sides of the war. It was located on the Corellian Run, which gave anybody who owned the planet a key port to control. And on the surface, it was littered with valuable minerals, including kyber crystals, something very interesting to both sides. And in Legends, it stated that the Separatists wanted this planet even more, not just for their resources, but also because its location would serve as a staging post for strikes on Kamito and Rathana. However, the planet was not just something that anyone could go and take, as it was inhabited by a number of humans who often preferred to be called Christophsians. However, this did not stop either side from wanting the planet, and shortly after the Battle of Geonosis ended, the conflict on Christophsis would begin. The first conflict to happen on the planet was a Separatist invasion, and the Separatists would send three key figures to take the planet. On the ground, forces were led by General Worm Loathsome. Loathsome was a general from the Retail Caucus, a smaller corporation that was part of the Separatist Alliance. Alongside Loathsome on the ground, Ventress, Dooku's new assassin, was also sent to help out. Expecting heavy retaliation from the Republic, the Separatists also sent a highly decorated admiral, Admiral Trench, to blockade the planet, and although we are not sure how many forces were part of the initial assault on the ground, we do know that the blockade had over 30 ships, including Trench's flagship, which was a Providence-class dreadnought named the Invincible, as well as 6 Lucrehulks and at least 23 Munificent-class frigates, as well as a number of hard-sail transports that were retrofitted to be more combat-oriented, as well as a number of Separatist landing crafts. Of course, all of these came topped with their complements of Vulture droids and Hyena bombers. Once the Separatists landed on the planet, they immediately began to occupy the cities. With command being split between Loathsome and a number of tactical droids, thousands of droids of different types began to terrorize the local and take control of the planet. Within these droid armies, you had B1s, B2s, Droidekas, Dwarf Spider droids, LR-57 combat droids, and a wide array of vehicles including snail takes, Octopatera droids, AATs, and even STAP speeders. However, the two Separatist forces were working together not only to occupy the planet, but also to cut off its inhabitants from anything coming from off-world. Because of this, any ships attempting to get through the blockade would be turned around with the threat of being turned into space dust, and those on the ground were being treated horribly by the occupying Separatist forces. Now, the locals did try to band together in a force known as the Christophsian Rebels and attempted to push the enemies back, but they quickly became overrun. Finally, in desperation, they pleaded to the Republic for support, and because of this, the conflict would only escalate from here. Now, the Republic heard the cries of the people of Christophsis and worked to do everything they could to send help. Their first attempt to help the planet was in the form of a relief force ran by Senator Bail Organa. He led a small group of clones and as much supplies as they could pack into their small ships and snuck through the blockade to meet up with the Christophsian rebels. Together, they attempted to help the people on the planet and continued to try to push back the Separatists. But the Separatists had sealed their blockade airtight, and at this point, nothing could come in or go out. So the people of Christophsis and the now Republic aid force were trapped on the planet, hoping that the Republic military could come and save them. However, the Republic forces on the ground were now stuck in a waiting game, as they had been pushed back all the way to the eastern exurbs where Organa had set up a refugee camp around the Minister of Defense's compound, and it was in the basement of this compound that the group had to hide every once in a while due to attacks from Loathsome's forces. At this point, all they could do is wait for either the Separatists to overrun them or for the Republic to arrive on time. Thankfully for Organa's forces, the Republic was sending help, and the first Republic force being sent came in two parts. The first was Anakin's task force, which had 3 Venators and 3 Pelta-class frigates topped up with supplies for the forces on the ground. And this task force was being led by Anakin on the Resolute. Following behind Anakin would be Obi-Wan's Venator or fleet. Now, some sources will claim that Obi-Wan had 4 Venators in his fleet, and some won't. It's kind of based on how you view the episodes on screen. Regardless, their fleets were widely outnumbered no matter what. Now, Anakin's fleet was first to arrive, and he attempted to try to break through the blockade, but it was nearly impossible, as it was being led by a great admiral, Admiral Trench. And during their initial assault, one of the support ships was actually destroyed, forcing the entire fleet to fall back and regroup with Kenobi. It was at this time that Kenobi revealed to Anakin that he had actually had a prototype stealth ship that Anakin was to use to sneak past the blockade and bring supplies to the surface to help Organa. Now, Anakin went along with this plan and commanded the stealth corvette alongside Admiral Yularen, Commander Blockout, and members of Commander Jet's Spec Ops Trooper Battalion. Their mission was going as planned until Trench forced pressure on the Republic fleet by sending Hyena bombers down to Organa and his camp. This put Anakin in a tough position. He could try to stay stealthy and bring supplies to the surface, but this ran the risk of having the entire forces on the surface being wiped out. Or he could go on the offensive and try to disrupt the blockade. Anakin, being Anakin, decided to go with the latter, and he played a game of cat and mouse, in order to bait out Trench and was able to destroy his flagship with him aboard. This allowed for two things to follow. Firstly, it allowed for Anakin to break through the blockade and bring supplies to Organa on the surface, and secondly, it allowed for the Republic fleet to engage the now scattered Separatist blockade. And after dropping off supplies on the surface, Anakin and his ship returned to the Republic fleet, where he and Obi-Wan loaded into their Delta 7Bs and attempted to clear out the blockade with Yularen in command of the rest of the fleet, which had now been reinforced by a couple of acclimators. But the Separatist presence in space nor on the ground was completely taken care of, and the Republic would need to launch a ground assault. Once the blockade had been weakened enough, the Republic forces were sent to the ground in order to land at the abandoned capital city of Chaledania, which had been left abandoned when Loathsome's forces pushed Organa into the eastern exurbs. Now, the Republic forces only sent one company of Republic troopers into the city, and they had very little resistance, and they quickly took the western district and the town square that was housed there. Now, this did not go unnoticed by Loathsome, and he rushed his troops back to the capital, and although fighting would ensue, it would quickly turn into a stalemate, allowing both sides to regroup and allowing the Republic to set up a larger base and staging point, where they deployed ATTEs, ATRTs, LAATs, bark speeders, and even AV-7 artillery cannons. Now, in Legends, it said that this base was on the outskirts of the city and was made up of only supplies that the clones could find on their ships. Regardless, in space, the situation was not getting any better either, as the Republic forces had now started to struggle with the Separatist blockade's remnants. Ultimately, though, both sides had reached their match, both in space and on the ground, and because of this, each side had to take more drastic measures in order to try to break the enemy. Now, the Republic's solution to the stalemate was to plan an elaborate ambush to weaken the enemy forces. Now, in Legends, we know that the ambush site that the Republic used was actually scouted by Slick and his squad aboard a couple of bark speeders. This squad consisted of Slick, Chopper, Gus, Jester, Punch, and Sketch, and they surveyed the site of a business center that would be ideal for the ambush. As they were heading back to the base, they actually encountered a B-1 patrol and some locals, to whom they actually saved but then insulted for not doing more to fight back against the Separatists. Nonetheless, they returned to the base and gave the intel to Anakin and Obi-Wan, who would further plan the ambush. And while this story is Legends, it does give us some insight into how the remainder of the canon story will play out. With an ambush plan, the Republic forces being led by Anakin and Obi-Wan attempted to take out this convoy of Separatist forces. However, they actually had to deal with an ambush of their own. Somehow, the Separatists had discovered their plan and had launched their own surprise attack on the Republic forces, who thought they had the jump on the Separatists. Although most of the Republic forces were able to escape via the roof of the building they were in, a number of clone troopers were lost. It was at this point that the Republic discovered the Separatists had found their own way to try to stop the stalemate, and that was to put a traitor within the Republic ranks. Now, this launched a joint operation by the Republic forces. Anakin and Obi-Wan attempted to track down the endpoint of the traitor's communications, while Rex and Cody attempted to figure out which one of their clone brothers had turned on them. Both of these missions ended with bad news for the Republic. Anakin and Obi-Wan were able to find their way to a Separatist base, which also turned out to be a landing site for Separatist forces. It was here that they discovered Ventress, who was behind the traitor plot, and a large number of Separatist forces being landed on the ground for an assault on the Republic position. Back at base, Rex and Cody discovered that the traitor was none other than Slick himself. Not only had he sent the Separatists the plans for their ambush, but in an attempt to escape from Rex and Cody, he blew up almost the entire weapons depot at the Republic base, destroying every single vehicle they had, with the exception of the AV-7 cannons and the ATRTs. To make matters even worse for the Republic, Yularen and his fleet had been sent away for a resupply mission, leaving the Republic forces on the ground severely undergunned, without supplies, without support from their fleet, and with the knowledge that there was an impending Separatist assault on the capital city. With all of the Separatist forces landed, they sent a massive force to assault the capital, consisting of almost every single asset they had on the planet. The Republic was able to fend off one wave of the droids before another larger wave came consisting of more tanks. And to make matters even worse, the Republic forces had now entered a communication blackout with the fleet that went on a resupply mission. Surprisingly though, once again, the Republic forces were able to hold off the enemy tanks thanks to their AV-7 cannons. Following the second wave, the Republic forces saw a new class transport flying in. Believing it was going to be supplies and reinforcements, the Jedi were shocked to see that it was none other than Ahsoka, Anakin's new Padawan and a Jedi messenger. It turns out Yularen had taken a single, unloaded Venator to deliver Ahsoka at the order of the Jedi Council, and due to the pressure from the remainder of the Separatist blockade, Yularen had to quickly turn around and leave the system once more, leaving the Republic forces still without supplies, without a resupply, and in another communication blackout. And to add salt to the growing Republic wound, the Separatists were back on the attack, this time using a deflector shield to protect their tanks as they advanced on the city. However, in a classic Anakin and Ahsoka move, they had a plan. The idea was that Kenobi and his troops would hold off the Separatist forces by using the buildings in the city to their advantage. While this was happening, Rex would defend the AV-7 cannons, and Anakin and Ahsoka would sneak through behind enemy lines to disable the shield generator, allowing the Republic artillery to take out the tanks again and for the Republic to take out all of the droids. Without any other ideas, they went forward with this plan, but the Separatists closed in on Kenobi's forces faster than expected, and he bought everybody more time by pretending he wanted to sit down with General Lothsum and discuss a potential surrender by the Republic over some tea. While this was happening, Rex and his men were still engaged with the droids and defending the cannons, but the situation was beginning to look dire on all fronts. Just in time though, Anakin and Ahsoka completed their mission, allowing for Rex to start using the artillery again and allowing for Kenobi to capture Lothsum and force him to surrender. Finally, Admiral Yularen alongside Yoda and Mace Windu arrived at the perfect time with a larger fleet, consisting of 3 Venators and 4 Acclamators, some of the ships borrowed from a fleet owned by Admiral Wirtz. They engaged what little of the Separatist blockade remained, which was only 6 munificent frigates and 3 Lucrehulks. This allowed for gunships to flood the capital city, flushing out any of the Separatists and allowing for more Republic forces to land from the Acclamators. With the Republic fleet taking control of space and the Republic forces landing on the planet, Lothsum was taken into custody and the battle was over and ended with a Republic victory. But the effects that this had on the planet and the Republic as a whole would carry on for much longer. Now, the Republic had gained victory on Christophsis, but they also gained something way more valuable. See, the most important effect of this victory was the lesson that it taught the Republic forces about how to fight in battle. This battle is known as the eye-opening moment that led the Republic to discover how the Jedi and the clones could work together, and when they did, they were unstoppable and could easily be more superior than the droids' army despite being at a numbers disadvantage. And this was a great side for the Republic and good news. However, not all of the effects of this victory were good. To start, the Separatists also learned the same thing the Republic did about their force strength, and this was the leading motivator in the race by the Separatists to create extremely powerful and deadly weapons like the Blue Shadow Virus or even the Defoliator weapon, and these would be issues that the Republic had to deal with later on. On top of all of this, they still had the issue of the traitor Slick to deal with. Now, he was taken into custody, but Republic High Command worked hard to make sure that nobody knew the true reasoning behind what he did, because there was fears that if more people knew why he did it, they would do the same thing. It also had the unintended effect of changing how many of the Jedi viewed their leadership of the clones. See, prior to this, they all saw themselves as superior to the Separatists because they were leading organic life. However, they realized that this wasn't much different than what the droids were doing. Now, the final negative effect that came from this battle was that Kenobi's false surrender was not only a propaganda tool for the Separatists, but it also led to neither side's rarely ever offering or accepting conditional surrenders for the rest of the war. However, the planet itself was not free from the effects of the war either. While the planet did fall under Republic control, it still remained a center point for conflict during the war, as the Separatists left at least one lightly armed base on the planet, and it became the site of a later conflict when Ventress, Dooku, and the recently fallen Jedi Vosh crash-landed on the planet and ran to the Separatist base. Regardless, the planet stayed under Republic control and was turned over to the Empire when they rose to power. The Battle of Christophsis is easily one of the most well-known and early battles of the Clone Wars, and now we have looked at every single aspect of this battle, including the effects of the battle and what came before it. I hope you all enjoyed, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe for more content like this.